for coming to Women Surviving and Thriving in Games Media. We're glad you guys could be here. You will notice there's cards in this main hallway. We have a moderator, Christine. She's right there. If you guys have questions while we're talking, we'd love if you wrote them down and directed them towards Christine. She'll put a symbol on there and give it back to you, and then 15 minutes before the end of the show, we'll invite people to come to the podium and ask those questions at that time. So we will probably get started. I think the best way to start is just to give a brief background on all of us in case there's any new faces, possibly mine. My name's Mary Kish. I've been in games media for about 4 years. I started at a small publisher. I moved on to starting my own indie game video and marketing company where I made trailers for indie games, and then I moved on to GameSpot, where I am now a producer, video production, video editor, and producer of live show like The Lobby. Thank you.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? Woo! All right, cool. My name is Neha Tiwari. I'm the executive producer at GameSpot at CBSI Games, and I've been in new media for over 10 years. I started out in tech. I worked at CNET, I've worked at Revision 3, I've worked at IGN, so I've worked with many of these lovely people on the panel here. And I've loved gaming since I was a child. My first system was the NES. My favorite game at the time was Metroid, and my favorite moment was finding out that Samus was a girl. I'm sure a lot of you felt that way too when you saw those beautiful pixels. I'm very excited to be here, and this is just a great moment. I'm so happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Naomi Kyle. I work for IGN. I'm an on-camera host. I'm an actress, and I do production and writing for IGN. I do a show called Top 5. Every day, you guys maybe know the Daily Fix. It's this like 3-minute long video of all the gaming news that happened that day, and it's up on our site. It's up on YouTube. I'm also happy to be here, and my first game was Donkey Kong Country on the NES. My first console, though, was the PS1, and I've loved games ever since. Yeah, cool. Happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Chobot. I believe that I'm actually 10 years in the industry this year. I've hosted over at IGN, at G4, and I currently host at Nerdist News over at Nerdist.com. And I have just launched a podcast called Bizarre States over there. So if you like weird, spooky stuff, please go check it out. It's very freaky. And so mostly hosting, but also I've dabbled in some game dev and writing with a game called Daylight out by Zombie Studios, which, maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't. But needless to say, I wrote it. So it was a nice chance to do something on the other side of things and to kind of understand more of what actually goes on in the developing and publishing world that even as a media person, I had absolutely no idea was as difficult as it was. I guess for personal things, my first console was actually an Atari 2600, although I would always go to my friend's house to hang out with her because she had an NES. And that was really the only reason why she was my friend. So yeah, I'm a bad person, and that's kind of all that there is to say about me. Can I steal this? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I am Megan Farokhmanesh. I work for Polygon, where I am a reporter. So this is actually my first job in the industry. I started about 2 years ago. I actually just celebrated my anniversary this month. As far as my first game ever was Final Fantasy VI, at the time 3 for Super Nintendo. Fun fact, this is also my first panel, so nervous barfing, totally part of the show.
This? It's not going. That's weird.
You can just ask.
Okay, thank you. Just awkwardly lean over here. Totally casual. Hello, everyone. I am Tara Long. I work at Revision 3. I started out in the industry about 4 or 5 years ago at Destructoid, And now at Revision 3, we were bought by Discovery a couple of years ago. So we do pretty much everything. We have Rev 3 Games, which is where you've probably seen me from. But I also host about 3 or 4 other shows there, mostly relating to science and current events. Like Megan, I am a little bit of a nervous public speaker. And let's see, what else personal? We're doing first video game we ever played.
First console?
God. First console was NES, but I far prefer the Sega Genesis. I still feel like that's the greatest console ever made. First game I ever played was probably Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego on our old Macintosh computer.
That's awesome. And this is our panel. So thank you again for joining us and hearing from us. We'll probably jump right in. So the first question I have is, what was a moment in the games industry where you realized you were different because of your gender? And I'm going to direct this first question to Megan.
Oh, no worries. So for me, I would say it took a little bit. When I first started, I was working back home in Missouri, so I kind of existed in a bubble. Pretty much my only connection to the game industry was the internet. Growing up, I've always known a ton of female gamers. I have a ton of female coworkers, so to me, I was no different. That all changed when I finally got to San Francisco and started covering local events. I started to realize that I was very often the only female in the room at events, that I was the only woman covering it, and that did make a difference. It's not uncommon for people to see me sit down next to them in a team scenario and make the joke of, oh, we're going to lose now. And the first time you hear that, okay, it's a joke, whatever. I personally don't think it's very funny because it's really not very original, but whatever. The thing is, when you start to hear it over and over again, you realize that, okay, this is something that more than one person obviously believes. And there's more to it than that, because I would sit down with a developer, and one of the first things they would ask me after me introducing myself, saying I'm from Polygon, a media outlet, they'd be like, do you really play games? And again, this is something that you hear happening, and you think that, okay, maybe once or twice. But this happens all the time, and it's one of those things where I volunteered no personal information about myself. So obviously these people are taking a look at me the same way that you guys are, and they're seeing something that says to them, this woman doesn't seem to belong. And honestly, if that thought is popping in your head now, look at me. Like, what is that? Because I don't know, and it's something that I still am trying to figure out.
I also had a very similar experience when I started. Mine kind of came actually slightly earlier. Very similarly, I was from Michigan, very much lived in kind of like a little bubble where my friends, who were mostly guys, would treat me equally. And so it never occurred to me that I wouldn't be treated that way if I got into like a broader sense of the industry. I had snuck into E3 in 2006, which was my first E3 ever. And that's an awesome story, by the way, but for a different time. And I noticed that I got a lot of attention because I was one of very few women there. Most of the women that were there were like in sales or marketing, or girlfriends that were kind of dragged there by their boyfriends. And you know, that's fine, that's not a problem, but when people discovered that I actually was interested in the game itself, it was like I was this weird anomaly. And hey, honestly, that kind of worked in my favor. I'm not gonna lie and say that it didn't. So that part was great because it actually kind of opened the door for me and gave me the opportunity to then get into places where I could potentially look for work like IGN and G4. The flip side to that, however, is it also made me a target. And so shortly after I did start working, I would get a lot of, do you actually play video games? And not only do I think that part of that is because I was a woman, but also part of it was because I was in media. So because you know you are on camera, you're just there because you're a pretty face and you have nothing going on in your head, and that is not the case, you know. Yes, TV or on-camera work usually is easier to get into if you are attractive, because it just is. That's just the way that production works, and it's just the nature of the beast. But at the same time, it's not the only thing that you have to offer. You also have to be smart, you have to be talented, and you have to know what you're talking about. And that was something that I constantly found myself having to prove. Lately, I feel like that has changed for me, and I think that part of that is because over the years I've stuck with it. You know, I'm not trying to use this industry as a launching pad into a bigger, better career. I'm here because I love it. This is what I like to do. And I think that that has finally garnered me some respect that I might not have gotten before. But still, it's taken 10 years. And I think that that is where the disappointment maybe, not even disappointment, because I'm not disappointed. I'm very lucky and I'm very happy. But it was maybe a harder struggle than it needed to be.
Something else worth adding, I think, is that, you know, it's one thing when people on the internet challenge you because of who you are, because they don't know you, I don't think they see you as a person always because you're just this figure. When it's someone working in your industry who maybe is familiar with your work and knows that you're probably working your ass off, it's incredibly demoralizing to have them discount you maybe just because of your gender.
It sounds like it's often, or at least in our experiences, that we might be one or few women in the room. And something that we also have to address is the fact that often we're speaking to a primarily male audience. So I'd like to address my next question to Naomi, and that's, how do you relate to your audience knowing that it is primarily male?
I'm going to take more of a positive side to this. I feel like what's really great about nowadays is there's the internet, and the more we become accustomed to the internet, we're going to see that a lot of dividers that used to exist are kind of gone. And I've noticed that just through people I've talked to, a lot of guys, you know, I know just as many guys who like Disney princesses as I know girls who like Call of Duty or, you know, MOBAs. So I feel like it's become more and more positive direction. We've gone into a positive direction, trying to get people to forget about the whole gender aspect and just include everybody for whatever it is they like. So I relate to people just on, you know, I like what I like, they like what they like. And if, you know, we find something common that we both agree on is a good thing and we love it, then that's how I relate to them, you know? And it's no longer, oh, she's female or male. It's more like, oh, she likes what I like. That's awesome. And social media, I feel, helps that just as much as the internet does. Yeah. So that's how I
answer. You know, I always find as well when I'm doing my shows, I have a few shows on GameSpot where I am just a voice. So I'm not actually on camera. I'm doing a voiceover, and you'll hear my voice on a show called New Releases, where I talk about the latest games that are coming out in that week. And I found sometimes that people would say, and you know, they would respond and say, are you just a voice? Are you just reading a script? Well, I wrote that script, and I played those games or researched them heavily to make sure that I was understanding everything I was talking about, using my background knowledge of games that I played. One of the ways that I always use to relate to my audience, and I think an easy bridge to gap, is humor. I found that if I put a tiny clip of Futurama, of Bender saying something funny, people enjoyed it, and then they weren't really looking at me as a woman who was reading a script, but a person that you can relate to that has something to say. And it's really easy to use humor as a way to bridge that gap and to come to terms on common ground that we're all people that love games and want to talk about them.
Yeah, we all love memes. I love memes.
That's really easy.
On this really quick.
Go for it.
I actually also think that this is changing. I mean, obviously I find, even just when I started back in 2006, that at these events I see more and more female faces, and ranging in age. And I think recently there was an article that just came out that said something like, gosh, I don't remember, 46% of all gamers are women, and they're not even just like younger women, they're women that are my age, and I am 37 years old, thank you very much. And yeah, and so, you know, it's like, and I think I'm killing it, honestly. And so that's great news. And the flip side of this, and it's not to bring it back into a negative tone, because I do think things are moving in a positive direction, but it seems like every time we take 2 steps forward, we take 1 back. And with the recent incidents that are happening with Anita Sarkeesian, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that last name right, and I'm sorry if I didn't, but and Zoe Quinn as well, you know, that's ridiculous that these women have to leave their house due to death threats. And it's just, you know, and listen, I think that, like I said, everything's moving forward. It's just that we seem to keep hitting these road bumps on the way, and I actually don't understand why. Because everybody that I talk to, I feel like I could go to anybody in this room and have like a really nice, honest conversation, and they might not agree with all my points, and I might not agree with all of them, but we would walk away from it great. Like, I don't think there's anybody in this room that wouldn't be a wonderful person to talk to. And so I don't understand why that's different than when you're on the other side of it on the internet. Aside from the anonymity, but even then, like everybody, like I get some of it's youth and just being stupid. Like I used to go into chat rooms on AOL and be like, poop, 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 poop. Because I could say poop and I couldn't say poop in my house. And it wasn't poop, it was the big word, but you know what I'm saying. And, you know, so I get that some of it's youth, but on the flip side, those people grow up too. So there's this just constant, like, is the internet just Mad Libs full of poop? Like, I don't get it. So, you know, I think things are going better and moving in a good way, but to hear about the Zoe Quinn of it all and how hard of a time she's having with it, and also who's the douchey ex-boyfriend that posted all that personal stuff? I mean, come on, guy, get over it. You didn't get married. What's the problem? So anyway, you know, it's just a shame that we keep running into these roadblocks, and I like to see that change.
Thanks, Jess. There's a lot of roadblocks that we're going to be talking about on this panel, and what I'd really like to address, I'll start with you, Neha, are beauty standards and whether or not you believe they exist in the games industry and how you deal with it.
I absolutely do think they exist. I started out my career as a host/producer, so that was something that I encountered early on, where you know I would kind of similar to what Megan was talking about, where you go to these meetings and they're like, "Oh, you're interviewing me? Like, do you actually know what you're talking about, or do you know what this is about?" And it's like, yes, I do. I actually like went to a top university. Like I'm actually pretty smart and I know what I'm talking about, and I know, like I prepped, I'm good. Like I know what we're doing, like don't worry about it. So there was a lot of that judgment, and at some point in my career I also hosted a hour-long live show on Justin TV at the time, and seeing all the comments in real time, like where people would just comment way more on like my hair or what I was wearing, or you know, just like my fashion choices versus what I was saying was demoralizing. And you know, at some point I realized that I wanted to be part of the conversation of like how was it decided that I should host that, or how is it decided that I should be hired to do that? And that's when I decided that I wanted to be part of management, and I've worked really hard towards that. And now I am in those rooms where those conversations are taking place of what hosts do we hire, why, you know. And I think that, and I don't want to like say that like it's coming from a malicious place, or that a lot of times that men even know that they're doing it, but it happens where they don't realize that, oh yeah, no, let's go with this person because they're prettier. But it's like, no, wait, hang up. But this person's actually a lot more skilled. I mean, I've been in conversations at places that I've worked where we were selecting booth babes, and as you can imagine, it was awkward, like really awkward, because there'd be times where they'd forget I was there, and I'd be like, hey, so woman, like, let's be real here. And so I'm really glad that I have that opportunity now, and you know, like 20% of my team at GameSpot is women, and that's a number that I'm really hoping to get up. And I don't want to hire people because they're women either. Like in our recent, we had a position open, and in the final round there were 2 women and 2 men, and I was just so excited. I was like, this is so awesome. I've never had this situation before where I've had an equal amount of women and men in the gaming industry applying for this position, and I'm so happy that I could be part of that decision-making process, because I think that I'm tired of men deciding what the beauty standards are in this industry. I think we should be deciding what they are.
Yeah, to kind of approach that same question from perhaps a broader perspective, first off, I absolutely do believe that there are beauty standards in gaming, but I also don't think that it's limited to just games. I think all forms of media have that problem. I mean, anybody who's seen television shows or watched movies knows that there's this common trope, you know, where it's this bald, sweaty, fat guy who's just a bumbling idiot, and he's got this like beautifully gorgeous, intelligent wife. And it's those kinds of tropes that sort of perpetuate this culture where men can be taken seriously and have their opinions validated no matter what they look like. But women, on the flip side, have to be both beautiful and intelligent in order to be taken seriously and to really make it in the industry. And it sucks. It really does suck. And I can't pretend like, being in the position that I'm in on YouTube and in sort of a front-facing position that I haven't benefited from that at some point or another. But I definitely think it exists in all forms of media. Perhaps games are just slightly more egregious about it.
Yeah, and I'd like to add too that so when I was in college, I did like my senior thesis on the representations of women in gaming, and I was looking more at, like Princess Peach, Lara Croft, seeing what primarily males felt about these different figures. So it seemed that a lot of them, they found like Lara Croft appealing, but not because she kicks ass, but because she's hot. Like it wasn't about her intelligence, it wasn't about her skill, but it was about the way that she looked. And I also looked at a lot of like gaming magazines at the time and saw like how they represented women, and it is that same thing that you see in media in general, which is like the shrinking woman, the small woman, the cowering woman, and that's something that we need to change. Like it's something that the games industry needs to change, and then as media, that's something that we can mimic as well. Like I don't think it should matter like if you're pretty or not to be on camera. Like I think it's an added bonus, but I don't like that there's a double standard where you can be kind of like an out of shape dude and everyone worships you, and then you have to be like a really pencil thin, like pretty and intelligent girl for people to listen to what you're saying, and then they'll still mock you and say bad things in the comments, which sucks. But yeah.
So going along with that kind of mindset for these next questions, I'd really like to address this to Jessica, and that's, what's the hardest thing you've had to go through differently because you're a woman in this industry?
I would say, just off the top of my head, that it would be if I did say something that people didn't agree with, or whatever the case may be, anything that somebody didn't agree with. Instead of being attacked for those points, I would usually be attacked because of the way that I looked. So to go further on the fact that you have to be pencil thin and pretty to be on camera, or to be this package. Yes, that's benefited me, but the flip side to that is then if you are, you get attacked for that anyway. Now all of a sudden you're the slut. You're if you don't respond to your fan fast enough, you're a bitch. And I mean, just the other day I had some crazy on Instagram, like harassing me constantly. I mean, and he was probably slightly just literally insane, because his sentences weren't even complete sentences, but but it's like, yet again, now I have to go through that, and I have to and I have to think about things, I think, a little bit more carefully than the average person. And part of that's just being in a public position, but part of that is also being a woman. And it's got to be one of those things now that I got to think, if I'm going to post a picture of my child, and I'm going to post it on Instagram because my parents watch my Instagram account, and that's how they get to check in on my child. Like, am I going to have to worry about some freak telling me in the comments that they're going to come kill my kid, which has happened, or like personal attacks where if I have a cold and I look sick that day on camera, but I still dragged my ass into work, instead what I get told is, you look like crap, and it's like, well, thanks, I have a fever of 102, but I still read the prompter, so go F yourself. So, it's just, I think that's it. It's the personal attacks, instead of being just like, hey, I'm fine if you attack me, but have it attack me in regards to the points that I'm trying to make in a conversation or the news that I'm giving you, and let's have it out in regards to that. Let's not have it out in regards to the fact that, you just decided to call me a name. And so that's one of the things. And to make a long story short, I mean, I've dealt with it for a long time, so I know kind of how to approach it. And it's weird, you start developing this instinct on which comments and which people you can kind of just ignore, which ones you have to be somewhat legitimately worried about, and who you just put on a watch list. It's a thing. It's this innate ability you start to develop, and I'd like to just be able to get rid of that, because it's stressful. It's stressful to be on guard all the time, because I do have to be on guard, because I do have to interact with our fans on a daily basis. It's not something as simple as, well, if you don't like that comment, ignore it, because I can't. I mean, the whole point of me being on camera and doing these things is to have social interaction with the people watching the show because, one, it's fun to talk to you guys, and two, that's how we find out what kind of content you want to continue to see and if we did a good job or not. And for the most part, everybody's awesome, but then you get those really, really scary people, and you need to figure out, how am I going to handle this? And you're always having that thought in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I agree. There's always an element when you're on camera that you might be approached differently. I know that sometimes I'm often on live shows playing games. A lot of those times those are competitive multiplayer games, and it's always in the back of my head, because it's always in the comments, that if I win, they'll be like, oh, great, good. If I lose, they'll say it's because I was a girl, or that I probably should get back in the kitchen, or something really aggressive. You can ignore those comments, but it doesn't mean that you didn't read them, that you didn't think about it for a quick second, that the reason I lost was because I was a girl. And that can be really hard from an on-camera perspective to keep that strong face. Sometimes you'll end up playing a game much more and researching it much more because you're afraid that people will think that you don't know what you're doing because you're a girl. I'm really interested in hearing what Neha has to say, because you're actually an executive producer from a different perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get a little personal with this, but you know, I was reading recently, like the White House released a paper saying that women, they basically would have to work 3 months or like 60 days to have equal pay to what their male counterparts often earn, which is tough. And furthermore, they found that about like 40% of women take time off. They interrupt their careers to have children or to raise a family. So I've been like married for like 4 years or something like that, and you know, it's one of those things where like, yeah, you know, I think I do want to have a family, but like with that data in front of me, like I find it really scary. You know, like it's something where like I've worked really hard to get where I am, and knowing that having a kid or raising a family might affect like my earning potential or my future opportunities or any of those things. Like I see Nicole nodding her head; she knows what I'm talking about. She has a kid, girl fight. You know, it's something that I always think about. And like, furthermore, like I was joking with Mary about this, but I was like, gosh, when I have a kid, I need to make sure that baby doesn't drop during E3, because that's like a really big deal for us. And I need to like make sure that like, I'm like nowhere, I don't want to be like as big as a house or something going to E3.
We're planning for conception at a very particular time.
Yes. I've actually talked to Cynthia about this because her daughter is like born near E3, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna avoid that. But I mean, it's silly, but it's like true, and it's like, whereas like my husband, who, you know, he doesn't work in gaming, but it's like that's something that doesn't even cross his mind. It doesn't even mean anything, and like there was only like 24% of men who reported taking time off for like family reasons. So I mean, it's like almost half of what women do. So that's, you know, that's one of those things that I've had to like approach differently, I think, if I wasn't in this industry, or if, I don't know, things were different. We lived in a utopian society where, you know, it was cool and that wasn't the case, that'd be great. But it's something that I definitely have to think about differently because I'm a woman.
Can I hop in on this?
Yes.
Being that I recently had a child, maybe I'm the exception to the rule. I felt that out of all of the industries I could potentially work in, that the games industry, and I don't know if it's because of the position I have as far as having more flexible hours or not, but was a more forgiving industry in order to have a child. I worked all the way up until I was about to pop. I mean, straight up, I was like writing daylight while I was in the hospital waiting for my C-section. and you know, and I was on camera and pregnant. And and it was amazing because I thought that would have been a problem. And I think that might be, I hate to say it, but I think that might be like a personal problem within ourselves as women to automatically expect that people are going to give you a hard time. And I'd like to say that that's probably not really the case. You know, aside from taking, I feel like more people just understand, like, this is just the way that it goes. Like, you know, you have to take time off to have a baby. And I think men deserve time off to raise their children as well. I don't think it should just be women. I mean, one, my husband better get his ass up at 3 o'clock in the morning to feed that kid, because I'm not the one doing all the work. Like, there's no way. It took 2 people to make that child, not just me. So you're gonna share the responsibility. And, you know, I have a job as well that I love. Why should I give up my work to be at home raising the baby? And so, you know, and I think guys wanna feel that way too. They wanna know that they can get up with the kid and feed him, because they should have that bonding time, and they shouldn't feel stressed about not being able to take time off of work legally and be allowed to have that time. And I think those things are changing. I don't know if any of you know about this, but California actually has a law that allows husbands to take a specific time off and also be compensated for the time that they are taking off. And it's not bad money. It's good. So they won't tell you about it. Make sure you look into it, because it's available for you. And I think that's wonderful. And so I think that, you know, the knee-jerk reaction, I think, as women, is to expect people to expect you to want to only be a mother, and that's not the case. I love being a mom, more so now than I did when I even had my child, because babies kind of suck. Toddlers are awesome. And they sleep through the night. and you know, so it's one of those things where I love being a mom, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't still love being a host, and I still don't love being into video games, and I still don't love doing all these other things, and I love having to contribute to my household, not only as a wife and a mom, but also as a breadwinner. And I love the fact that my husband works as well. And we, you know, it's hard. It's really tough. We feel bad. Like right now, my husband hasn't seen our kid in like 3 weeks because he's traveling. I haven't seen my kid in like 4 days because I'm traveling, and I'm gonna start crying because it sucks. It's hard. But he's fine. We have a nanny. He loves her. And I know that nannies are expensive and daycare's super expensive, and some people just can't pull it off. And so hopefully find a route that works for you. But for those of you that can, I don't think you should shy away or feel bad for having kids. And I think you'd be amazed at how accepting the industry and your audience is for when you have a child. Because, again, to make a longer story longer, all the comments when I was pregnant was, if anybody said anything about, oh, Jessica's looking fat, everyone policed that person and said, no, dude, she's got a person inside of her. And that would shut it down. And then when I had my baby, I had tons of tweets and Facebook posts, congratulations, the kid looks awesome, and it's been a really positive experience. And so yes, it can be very difficult and hard and scary, but it can also be very positive, and I guess that was my entire point.
Thanks, Tess.
Is my mother paying you? Is my mother paying you?
No.
I'd like to clarify with the note cards. If you do have a question, Christine is walking around right now. If you want to raise your card, she'll pick it up and give you a symbol on it. That'll help us to kind of organize them and make sure that we're not having duplicates, things like that. So definitely give it a raise. She'll come around and grab them from you. Thank you so much. And moving right along, I have a question for Megan. Do you think that there are women who give off the wrong image of how women should be viewed in the industry?
Oh man, this makes me super angry. I think there's this really gross, pervasive idea, not only in games, but just in general, that that woman did this, she's wearing this, she said that, she's setting back her gender. And I cannot say this loud enough, but that's such fucking bullshit, right? I mean, I just want to point out, when was the last time you heard anybody say, like, look at what that guy's wearing, that t-shirt's so slutty? Like, that doesn't happen. That's not a thing ever. So when you're grouping every woman together, you're not only discarding her individuality, you're disregarding all of her good work, but it's a really dangerous thing because you're creating this strange, like, mob of women, and you're creating, like, a very much an us versus them dynamic. And I think that's not only a huge mistake, but it's just gross. We are individuals. Like, even this table, we're not ambassadors for women, we're just women sharing our experiences up here. You need to treat us as people, not just some big anonymous group. Angry rant.
I think this is kind of a tricky question to answer because on the one hand, the optimistic side of me wants to believe that it shouldn't matter how you dress or how you present yourself. What should matter is what you have to say. And I do think that's true to an extent. But the other half of me thinks, video games are a fun job, but they're still a job. And whether you like it or not, the way you present yourself does matter, and it does affect how people view you. And it sucks because I do know a lot of really intelligent women in this industry who are just so smart, know a ton about games, way more than I do. But they present themselves, the way they present themselves just attracts the worst kind of people. And it sucks because nobody's actually listening to what they have to say, no matter how valid their points are. And in a lot of ways, I feel like that does send the wrong message, perhaps by subconsciously signaling to other young women that in order to make it in the industry or in order to get noticed in the industry, you have to appeal to the lowest common denominator, which I just think could not be further from the truth.
Thanks, Tara. I'd like to ask you a follow-up question, which is often in this industry when there are aggressive comments that you have to make very difficult decisions about whether or not to engage. So, Tara, I'd like to ask, is it worthwhile for people who support equality or to engage or debate with these types of questions or comments?
It's a great question. I would like to bring up a photo, Exhibit A.
Continue.
This is, it's just photo number 1. This is somebody on Twitter, Gabriel Rodarte. I don't feel bad about calling him out because he's an a-hole. And I've done it on my Twitter multiple times. So this is a screenshot of his Twitter. He is super into games. He tweets at all of the major public figures in the gaming industry, talking a lot about games. And then these are the kinds of things he tweets at me. Could you go to the second image, please?
I'm going to get there.
Yeah. This is just one of many tweets, by the way. The first one was, do you do anal? The second one was, do you do girl on girl? And the third one summed it all up and asked me if I did anal or girl on girl. And this guy knows who I am. He knows I'm not a porn star. And yet, these are the kinds of things that he only ever tweets to women on Twitter. And I think this brings up kind of an interesting point about sexist internet commenters. I feel like that they kind of are divided into two groups. There's the people who are just blatantly misogynistic, very mean-spirited, and then there are people who are perhaps more implicitly misogynistic and make dumb sexist jokes maybe without realizing how offensive they're being. And for the former group, I feel like those kinds of people are misogyny is so ingrained in who they are as a person that I don't feel it's worthwhile to engage with them because nothing I or any of us up here could say would be able to change the kind of person that they are. But on the flip side, the people who say things, make dumb jokes, maybe don't realize how hurtful they're being, I feel like it is worthwhile to engage with those people because shaming really does work sometimes. And I retweeted that guy's tweet and a ton of my followers called him out on Twitter. And this is something that we do a lot in our YouTube comments as well, especially for people who just make really dumb jokes. I find that more and more now there's sort of a group of people who come, I don't want to say to the rescue because it sounds weird, but who will call those kinds of people out and make them realize just how idiotic and dumb they sound. And a lot of times their behavior stops after that. I called this guy out and he hasn't really said anything that awful to me, but actually go to picture 3. Sure. Because I specifically put a call out on Twitter asking for questions for this panel about women surviving and thriving in games media. And this is the question that he sent back. What video game character could you see yourself marrying? And again, it's that kind of implicit sexism that totally negates any of the real change that we're trying to make here at this very panel, and just completely turns it into some trivial diatribe about, like, oh my God, Solid Snake is so cute, and like, who gives a shit? Like, who gives a shit? Just like, send me a real question. So people like him, I feel like it is worthwhile, even though he's a terrible person. But other people who are just like, get back into the kitchen, bitch, it's like, who even are you? Like, I don't know what to do with you, so I'm just gonna ignore you. Like, it's just not, a lot of times it's just not worth your while. You really have to pick your battles carefully.
Yeah, I think that's such a great last statement, is that you got to pick your battles with this one, because it is such a slippery slope to argue with people online. And one of the biggest problems with the current way we communicate is probably through forums, comments, or Twitter. 140 characters is a really small amount to explain why someone has inherent issues with women. And a lot of times that can't come across, and you end up being put into one of two groups. You're either, this really insane social justice warrior who hates men, or you're a misogynist who's super sexist. And we forget that there are a bunch of really good people in between those groups. And comments can be a very difficult way to give your statement. I find just as well with Tara is often, at least when I started at GameSpot, people didn't really defend me too much. They didn't know me, and I had to be careful with what I responded to. Now, if I put up a video and someone says, you don't know what you're doing, somebody in the comments will defend me. They will speak up for me, and there is some self-patrolling going on with great people, and I say good on them, and if you see something weird, then that's great to call it out. But be wise with the words that you choose, because they do define you, and those tweets, as we've seen, can be known to come back and haunt people. So you pick your battles, but in end, I would say it's positive, because I find that the good nature in people does come out, and I'm often defended by the comment sections of GameSpot users. I'd like to move right along. We have a few more questions I'd really like to get to, and we're running out of time. But quickly, this is such an interesting question. Naomi, how do you deal with those incessant sexist comments?
Well, you guys have been talking about it quite a bit, and I feel like it's kind of the main problem we're always dealing with in this industry is the internet is just vicious. For not all the time, it's great for many things, but I feel like we've all been talking about comments, and the fact that we're on the internet just breeds, even young kids sometimes go on the internet and they'll start talking negatively, and they don't really know that what they're doing, but they find it funny or whatever. IGN's really great at pointing out that a number of the people who do comment these negative comments are a small percentage. And I do agree that it's very important to choose your battles, ignore the ones that aren't worth doing anything. You'll always get that guy who's, I don't know, like you said, misogynist, or say something that he doesn't realize is wrong. And those people, you don't really have to engage. But I feel like the ones who are flat out mean and could be told, hey, like what you're doing is wrong. Either you retweet them, or however you want to handle it if it's in the YouTube comments. IGN's really good at moderating their comments too. I feel like lately we've taken on an action of even like, hey, we heard your comment. Like sometimes people on the internet just want to be heard. And if we tell them, hey, we heard your comment, no matter how bad it is, they'll often reply back with like something, oh, I didn't think you would see that, or, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And we just have to keep doing that as much as possible to feed into this, like, almost like we're all, trying to be heroes for each other and trying to, defend each other as much as possible. And what was the final point I wanted to make? Just yeah, like as much as if you put focus towards it, I feel like more and more the bad people will die out. There's always the young kids, which you can't really do anything about because they'll do what they want. But and just in your own like homes as well, if you can tell your kids, or if any of you guys out there have kids, just keep an eye out, see what they're doing. I know it's really difficult, especially kids being private and whatnot. But I think, yeah, it's just perpetuate that constant, positive feedback and defend the people that you admire, and don't let them suffer through that. I think the internet is changing gradually, and I'm seeing more and more people. There was an infographic going around about IGN editors, or just editors in general in the industry, who were being badmouthed for having opinions, you know, and we were just calling them out, like, these people are cool to follow. Let's follow these people. Like, no, they're not. You know, they're just voicing an opinion. So let them do that. And yeah, I just think right now I'm just seeing a lot of positive just people looking out for each other on the internet. So how I deal with it, I ignore them, or I will, you know, call them out, and I will pick my battles.
Jess, did you want to quickly add it to that?
I mean, just to keep hitting kind of the same points. I mean, the way that I handle it is I kind of play it by ear, you know, like if it's just generic talk, just general nastiness, I just ignore it. I kind of struggle with it sometimes because I think, you know, if somebody took a crap in your living room, you wouldn't just leave it there. You'd clean it up. So do I delete these? Do I ban the person? You know, but then if you ban them, they just make a new account. Like how do you handle that? I play it by ear. I play it with how I feel the mood that day. I've gotten, you know, I mean, 10 years, I've gotten really good at ignoring it and not really caring. And I think that that's probably the biggest crossroads, is learning to just, these people, you're never going to see them. What do you care? You know, your parents have always told you don't care about what other people think. Don't. Who cares? Like, what's going to happen? The flip side to that is if somebody makes a direct threat against you, like a harmful threat, or a threat against an area where you're going to be, like a bomb threat here at PAX. Not that there is one. I'm just saying if somebody had, you know, make sure and immediately go and file a report with the police, your local police. I've done this many times. They blow me off. Make the report so that it's documented. You know, whether they tell you yes or no, they have to take the report. Take pictures of everything that this person has sent you, and keep them in a file, so that when the what's the word I'm looking for? Investigator does call you, because they do have to follow up. If you make a report, you have the evidence. And then also there's an FBI hotline number, which I should have looked up so I could give it to you guys. I don't have it, but if you search on the internet, it'll pop up for cyber crimes, which also relate to threats and physical harm, because the police and the FBI can't do anything unless a direct threat against you for harm is made. So the minute that you get that, document it, make those reports, contact that FBI hotline number, and I can promise you, they will be looked at.
Thanks.
So that way, if anything does happen, you have to go to court or whatever, you can follow up and have your evidence.
Great. It's taken a little bit of a dark turn. I would like...
Talking about stalkers.
Yeah. We had so many questions, but it looks like we're running out of time, and I would like to address some questions from the audience. So if you have an X on your card, please feel free to line up at the mic. If that's not your symbol, we're going to try and get you guys in the next round. We're trying to get through as many as you can. Oh, can we turn on that mic? Great.
Hello. All right, so I had a kind of a social dynamic question here. What are your thoughts on the online phenomena of men and women playing as reverse gender characters based on the perks they might get from other players based on sex? What I mean by that are female gamers online, for example, in maybe World of Warcraft, who may play as a male character, like they might play as a male orc or something, just for more respect from people in their guild, or from male characters who may play as a female character hoping to get gifts from other players. What are your thoughts on that?
Interesting. Is there anyone who'd like to address that?
I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I'm not gonna judge. I mean, you know, if you're getting some epic loot, or you know, it's a valid thought. I mean, it's probably maybe not something I should admit, but yeah. You know what? I would never play a male character to gain respect. I'd play a male character because I just wanted to play that particular male character, and I would play a female character for the same reason. What's really weird, and I don't know if it's just me, but I have never felt invested in characters based on their gender. I'm just invested in the character because it's the character. And even when I was playing like Mass Effect and I had a female shepherd, while I loved her because I'm the one that created her, not necessarily because she was female. And I just happened to choose her as being a female because I had the option. But if that option wasn't there, I wouldn't have felt left out. or weird about it. And so people that decide to play for perks or things like that, you know, I mean, you're trying to win a game, essentially.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this, number one. Number two, how do you deal with attacks and baseless criticism from other females?
Ooh. Well, we all like each other, so. I think that it can get catty. I've witnessed that myself with managing people and also just being in the industry for a while. I think, I don't know, look, like male, female, whatever, like there's gonna be people that you just don't like or that don't like you. And as far as like cattiness goes, like a lot of times people will try to like pit you against another woman. If you Google my name, there's an image that pops up of me and like Natalie Del Conte, who worked at CNET. It's hilarious because we're friends, but it's like, who do you think's hotter? You know, and it's like totally ridiculous, like baseless, stupid. People will always try to like put you against each other, or I mean, like I'm sure like, you know, Jess used to be a host at IGN and now Naomi is, and you know, people. I remember I worked at IGN when that happened, and I mean, people were awful about it, but they're fine. Like
I think it's
That
important.
being said, there's a certain G4 individual that called me old on camera once, even though I never even knew her. That being said, she can kiss my ass.
I think it's important to also understand, like, I actually really don't like words like catty or snippy, which I think are inherently, you know, terms that we use for ladies. You never say two dudes had a cat fight, right? So I think it's important to understand that if, on a personal level, if a girl is having an issue with me at work, I go the high road. You always go the high road. You don't attack. You don't fight back. And you treat people the way that you want to be treated. You do the right thing. And those are kind of like generic comments, but the idea is to not put it into the idea that it is a cat fight, because it never was. Yeah. That doesn't exist. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello. So last year, Steve Butts, editor-in-chief of IGN, had an article, was titled "Changing the Comments at IGN," and I'll just briefly read the couple paragraphs. So there's a problem with IGN. A lot of the comments lately have been terrible. Horrifying is probably more like it. While most IGN comments are respectful and productive, we've let the abusive comments get to a point where they dominate our discussions. When even just one hostile comment is enough to ruin an entire thread, we've got to take our job curators of our site more seriously. And basically he just goes and changes the comment section where they decide the heightened level of moderation, and I'm assuming other gaming sites have done that as well since, say, a year has passed for IGN and other gaming sites. Has the moderation of the comment section, you think, lowered or heightened since such an implementation? Like, say, what the percentage of harassment towards percentage of that harassment is towards the women, and is that from a teen to a 20+ audience? Sorry.
Right. Well, I think we get actually monthly updates on how the moderation is going, and we have a lot of people doing it, just freelancers and people who have volunteered to help, and it's definitely gone down. I think if any website has the power to moderate their comments and to eradicate the negativity, they should definitely do it, and IGN has done it pretty well, actually. I've been really surprised at the comments and the kind of culture that we've established now. Do you disagree, Jess?
I think now IGN has changed, and it's probably a lot better. When I was started, up until even right up until I left, and Nicole can also attest to this, it was a constant fight that I was battling with upper management to have the TOS actually implemented. There's a section of IGN called the Vesti, which is basically a cesspool. And there's no reason to even have it there, because all of the comments, I shouldn't say all, but almost all of the comments were negative, whether they were even against females or not, but it was blatantly, usually when it came to the stuff that was about me, was very, very sexist and aggro. And You know, I mean, that was, 7 years of me complaining about it, and it never, and I was told, like, that's just the internet, you know? So I have a different feeling about it maybe than Naomi, because she's been able to reap the benefits of them finally paying attention, which is great. And I think that's fantastic that that attention has finally been paid to it. And I would like to see more sites do that as well. But yeah, it shouldn't have taken that long. And that goes for any company, not just IGN.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, one. Bring back cheap, cool, crazy.
Yeah. Woo!
Hi, I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm really lucky with that.
Yay.
We love you.
I have twin
All of
8-year-old girls. At least one of them's going in the gaming field somewhere. Do you have any advice to help me raise them to be ready when they have to deal with, and I can't stress this word enough, the idiots out there? How can I help them?
I think, you know, it's all about self-confidence. You just raise your girls to understand and to believe in themselves as much as they can. I mean, I have the benefit of not having to worry about that to a certain extent because I have a little boy, and that's a shame, you know, that I have to think about that. That being said, I am going to monitor the crap out of my child, and if he so much as acts like any of the comments, like the negative comments that I've seen, he is in some serious trouble. So, you know, I mean, so yeah, for both sides, I'd say just, you know, in general, monitor your children, and there's ways to do that where they can still feel like they have their independence, but then you also know what's going on. You know, those ESRB labels and parental controls are made for a reason, and so I do find that when parents complain about games being violent or having a bad effect upon the children, you gotta just kind of be a parent. Like, there's a reason why those are there. We have made it available for you. However, as raising girls in the industry, I would just say try and instill with them the most self-confidence you can and the support of the family, and know that you love them, and not to take the comments as seriously as maybe it would feel. It's like, you know, when you're in high school, you know, you get picked on in high school. I remember my parents telling me, you know, this is just high school. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Don't feel bad because somebody doesn't like you or because you weren't invited to this party. And as a kid, it felt so serious at the time because that was my whole world. In hindsight, obviously, it's not. So I guess just try to find that balance of, like, when they are hurt, take it seriously, but keep trying to push to them that the world's a big open space and you can make your own pathway and don't have to worry about other people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that was helpful. I hate giving parent advice because I am not.
Go ahead.
Hi. It's not uncommon to hear people, like YouTube personalities say they don't read the comment section, and even people like Total Biscuit just disable them completely. So do you think that there's really a lot of value in even having a comment section on the site?
I think that I know that so in my career, I've had a lot of crying hosts come to me and say, like, and it's like, oh, it's wrong. And it's like, I read the comment section. It's like, oh, why did you do that? Like, because it's like, you know, it's almost like this like masochistic thing. You know, if you want to feel bad about yourself, dive right into the YouTube comments. Like there's no other sure way to get there. So, you know, I don't know if like disabling them is the right thing. I know YouTube has tried some new things, like, you know, of course, like removing some of the anonymity and making you like who you are, you know, so that you can comment, which a lot of people hate as well. But, you know, comments are a great place for people to understand and take the temperature of how people feel about your content. And it's a shame that it's become such like a horrible place on YouTube. So I usually do steer like hosts to just like look at the comments on site. So I encourage you guys to comment on site, just because YouTube is really hard, and I don't think the answer is taking them out. I think it's just trying to find what you can that's good, and trying to just have blinders on and realize that that's not the majority. Like the majority of people don't comment. So.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Does anyone have any thoughts? Okay. Probably only have time for like two more.
Hi.
Hello. Major game companies have tried to represent women differently lately, at least from what I've seen anyway. Are there any examples of representations of women that you've been proud of? And also, conversely, are there any examples that make you angry?
Proud, I'd say Jade Raymond. She's the CEO at Ubisoft Toronto. She's awesome. And all these lovely ladies.
Well, what I'm curious in, I guess, is like game characters, especially.
Oh,
like,
characters. Sorry, I
Fem
misunderstood.
Chef as an example.
I can kind of address this a little bit. Last year, I think when we were doing our top 5 games of the year videos, one of my games of the year was Beyond Two Souls. And in particular, I really liked Jodie's character a lot because it seems like in most video games, they're basically one of two women. There's the over-sexualized, over-empowered woman. I don't want to say over-empowered because that sounds weird, but like the Lara Croft type character, right? And then there's also just like the damsel in distress type of character. And one of the reasons I love Jodie is because she doesn't fit into either of those molds. She's literally just a normal human girl. And they do such a good job of portraying her as such in the game. You know, she has insecurities like any other girl. She has weaknesses. So I think personally she is one of the better examples, or at least one of the more realistic portrayals of women in video games.
But would you marry her?
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
I loved my fem shep. And I loved my fem shep because I loved my fem shep, and I loved my fem shep because it wasn't that she was a girl or a guy. She was just fem shep. Like all of her decisions and all her thought processes were just what you would think. It wasn't one or the other. It was completely gender neutral. And it was perfect because I just don't see myself as being a woman or a girl. It just happens that that's how I came out. And so I just, you know, you just write for a human being. You don't write for guy or girl.
Well, I would love to continue. It sounds like we are being told to vacate the room, and I'm so sorry.
Evacuate
We'd
the
be happy
building.
to address your questions if anyone wants to come up to us. We'll be hanging out a little bit. And I would like to take this time again to say thank you so much for coming and for your support. We're happy to be here, and we love what we do.